My watch says 10 after 2, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Um, and I want to remind you that all these slides will be on our website. Rebecca has told me she's already uploaded the speakers so far, and as we have our speakers this afternoon, they will be added. For our next program, COVID stress in your workplace and on your vehicles, I want to introduce you to Dr. Buster Lackey. Dr. Lackey holds a PhD in psychology, a Master of Science in clinical counseling, a Master of Arts in religious education, and he conducted postgraduate studies at Harvard University in educational leadership. He's a licensed professional counselor and licensed alcoholism and drug abuse counselor. And for the past 2 years, he has served as the executive director of the National Alliance of Mental Illness. He's also a hostage and crisis negotiator and is the mental health consultant for the North Little Rock and Sherwood Police Departments. He's co-owner of a private mental health practice in North Little Rock, the Center Health and Wellness Center. Known as the Southern Storyteller, his quick wit will keep you laughing while you learn. Let's welcome Dr. Buster Lackey.
Well, I tell you what, after that lawyer just left, I'm depressed and I don't even...
You on overtime?
Yeah, I'm on overtime right now. I don't know how you pay yourself overtime, but we'll figure that one out. So, stress and COVID. Everybody's experienced something between just getting sick, the deaths. You know, we've all experienced it. You know, I can tell you, I came in a very personal story here. In the 23rd of September in 2020, I started getting sick. Doctors kept telling me I had just this stomach bug and all this. Turned out to be COVID. I spent the next 30 some odd days in intensive care and the next 6 months at home on oxygen just trying to survive. Doctors called my wife at one point and told her that I was not going to make it through the night. And, you know, I'm a Southerner, right? That didn't sit well with me. So I said, here, hold my tea and watch this, you know. But I am thankful to be here today. And I'm just actually thankful to be alive right now. But stress and COVID is real. If you remember I think I've lost track of years now. 2 years ago we had the conference. 3 years ago we had the conference. And I was here and I spoke on mental health and just in general overview of mental health and schizophrenia and some things like that. Well, how many of you have more than 5 people that work for you? 1 in 5 has some mental health condition. So for every 5 employees, 1 of those employees will have either diagnosed or I see people pointing at each other, and I'm sure that followed under that lawyer somewhere, you know. But 1 in 5 people have some form of mental illness, either diagnosed or undiagnosed. You know, 1 in 4 children in our schools have some form of mental illness. And before, it was all taboo. We didn't talk about it. You know, growing up, I had an aunt. Her name was Virginia, my grandmother's sister, but we called her Aunt Puddin'. And everybody would just say, oh, that's just Aunt Puddin', don't worry about her. Well, now that I actually have some training in this, I realized that Aunt Puddin' was actually probably schizophrenic. But no one, we didn't address it, right? We just kind of like, oh, well, that's just how she is, and, you know, keep the kids over here, and she'll be all right, you know. But now, here we are in 2022, we are in the middle of a pandemic, which, by the way, everybody keeps trying to figure out how to do this pandemic. You know, just to point out, the last pandemic was in what, 1914? I'm pretty sure most of those people are dead, so they can't tell us how to run a pandemic. So we're all doing this by the seat of our pants. There's nobody that knows what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. I don't care how many initials they have behind their name or what agency they work for in Washington. I work for NAMI Arkansas, and as executive director, that's the National Alliance for Mental Illness. And our mission is pretty simple. NAMI Arkansas offers support, education, advocacy services dedicated to abundantly improving the lives of those affected by mental illness. So any of you people or your staff can call our 800 number anytime, day or night, and we can probably help you figure out what's going on or get you to the right person or make the referral. A lot of times we get calls from people that says, my daughter, my son just got this diagnosis. I have no clue what to do or how to do it or what this is. So our staff is very versed at working with them. And I'm hoping here in a short time, we can start, we're going to be working with 211 across the state. So you can just dial 211 and get information like that instead of having to remember 800 number. Mental health, the pandemic has led to increased stress, loneliness, anxiety, depression among all ages. Would you agree with that or not? Yeah. Here we are, we're trucking along, we're doing everything, we're blowing and going, we got conferences, I'm traveling, and then I wake up and they say, oh, we can't get on the airplane anymore. Oh, everything's shutting down. So now I've got to work from home, which I did not know. I need to think about that too, because I need to deduct my home stuff according to that lawyer. But my internet especially, that's $80 a month. But the pandemic hit us, and we were not ready for it. Not just America. I mean, we saw, we all got Facebook and stuff. We saw Italy and France and Germany and how people were handling it or not handling it. So it really hit us, and it hit us, it really gave us a gut punch. Because all of a sudden now on the front page is mental health. In fact, the WHO, the World Health Organization, came out and said that there's a second silent pandemic. That second silent pandemic is depression. You got depression and anxiety, because if you think about this, and I have talked to Congress people all over our country, and I said, we messed up. We told people to social distance. So people barricaded themselves in their room. Elderly shut off everything in the world. When what we should have said is physical distance yourself. I can still be around you if I'm physically distance myself. In fact, in our neighborhood, we actually came together every night at 7 p.m. Everybody would stand by their mailboxes, and we just kind of talked across the streets and check on everybody. I live in a cul-de-sac with 13 homes, and it was beautiful, And we was able to keep in touch with our neighbors that are 90 and our neighbors that are 80, and everybody was still kind of checking on each other, making sure we had bread and milk or whatever. But most communities did not do something like that. So the depression and anxiety went through the roof. What does COVID stress look like? Anybody got an idea of what it looks like? Yeah, neither do we. It is all over the place. Increased anxiety and uncertainty, feelings of loneliness or sadness, feelings of helplessness and frustration, changes in eating or sleeping patterns, changes in substance use, information update burnout. We now have what we call Zoom fatigue. Everybody on Zoom, sorry. You've been watching this all day long. It took the other mental health conditions and threw them through the roof. So, people who had schizophrenia, bipolar, borderline personality, any of those are now ramped up at a heightened, and you're dealing with those either by your workers or the people you're taking to and from, your clients. What have you noticed? Anybody notice anything in particular with your staff?
Anxiety about transporting.
Yeah, but we got aggression and anxiety. Now let me tell you, because I was sick for quite a while, so I didn't go into like Walmart or Kroger's or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I like the click it and get it picked and brought to the house so much that we still do this. Which I think is funny, because about 20 years ago, people started to try these little errand businesses, and they never worked. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's got an errand business going. But the aggression, let me tell you, I had to go to Kroger's the other night. My daughter turned 14, and we had her birthday lunch, and we forgot something, so I just said, well, I'll just run in real quick to Kroger's. So the first thing that happened when I walked in, everybody that had a mask on looked at me like I was the Antichrist or something. I don't know. I was like, what something with my nose? Or what's wrong with me? And I'm standing there in line, and this lady tells me, you really should be wearing a mask. I said, yes, ma'am, thank you. I am probably the most protected person with COVID. I've got all the antibodies that you could possibly have, and I've had 3 different types of treatments. And I got the new one, too, just a few weeks ago, and I have PTSD because I thought, oh, my God, I can't do this again. So I'm sitting here, and I feel a sneeze come on. My eyes are watering, but by George, I am not going to sneeze in this store because I knew if I did, I'd be lynched or something. I mean, I would be ran out of that store. So luckily, the guy over here in this aisle, he coughed, and everybody's looking at him, and I went, shoo, and I had to look over here. We are so afraid. You know, I think the plastic behind the driver's seats and stuff, you know. I just went on a conference, and I was coming back in from Arizona, and I mean, the driver, what's it called? Uber, COVID brain. Uber, you know, he handed us the wipey to wipe down the seat and stuff when we got out. And, you know, at first I thought, well, I ain't got cooties. And I thought, well, actually I did. I kind of had a lot of cooties. But you know, we're so hyper vigilant right now. Everything that happens, we are overboard on the reactions, the anger, the frustration. And I've gotten calls, you know, from people that drive some of these buses or routes, and they're like, through the roof with anxiety. And, you know, it's like they're wanting counselors, so we're referring them to counselors, referring them to medication, to doctors to give them medication for this. This is when you wish you had stock in the pharmaceutical because it's gone up through the roof. So we got to cope. But how do you cope? Everybody's different. There are triggers to these things. And we call it HALT, H-A-L-T. When you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, whatever your addiction is or whatever you're going through, it's going to trigger it regardless. Now everybody can sit there and think, somebody that when they get hungry, you better feed them or get away from them. My wife is one of those people. She actually gives me limits. She's like, 10 minutes. And I was like, 10 minutes to what? She goes, 10 minutes before I'm going to get very angry because I'm hungry. I was like, oh, God, get in the car. We're going to go right now. What's the first thing we can get into? Lonely. When people are lonely, these triggers. Anxiety, depression creeps up when these people are lonely and they don't know how to cope. They don't know how to deal with it. Tired. Now think about this. Your drivers start at what time in the morning sometimes? Early. You know, so that means they're tired every time they get in. And they're dealing with all the pleasant people that we put on the bus. You know? And they're not singing the wheels on a bus go round and round. So they're having these their own little thing. Plus, the person in the back is probably coughing or whatever, kind of like he did. And I'm going to step over here on this side of the room. And when he does that, when they do that, they're tired, they're hungry. You know, things aren't going well for them. When they come in, they don't want to talk to you. They don't want to talk to their supervisor. They don't want to do anything. They don't even want to do their paperwork. They just want to get the heck out of there, get their clothes off, get showered, get something fresh on, and hope they didn't come down with COVID today. Because they got to work to make ends meet. You know. The ways in which we respond to or manage stress, uncomfortable emotions, the way in which we respond to life's demands. Some people just couldn't cope before COVID. So we given them a pretty, big check here and said, here's your excuse, COVID. So we're giving them some leeway. But really, they didn't know how to handle anything else in their life beforehand, and now it's just made it 10 times worse. Some examples of coping, it's always positive or adaptive. Adaptive coping and maladaptive coping. So let's talk about that for a second. What's some positive ways to cope? Well, one thing I tell my patients when I'm working with them that come in for anxiety is to take your tongue and put it on the roof of your mouth and make the figure 8. You can try that. It's okay. I know you're already doing it, but I gave you permission because someone's looking like, I don't want anybody to see my mouth moving. So when you do that, here's what you cannot do. You can't think of anything else. Your brain has to focus on your tongue touching the roof of your mouth and doing the figure 8. So when next time you're sitting at the red light and it's one of those long red lights and everybody's not going, they're on their phones, whatever, and you're getting frustrated, just do the figure 8. It works. Some other examples. I got a person that gets really nervous and anxious, and she's a driver. So she carries a little bottle of lavender with her, and she'll kind of put it on her chest or put it on her arms, her wrist. So when she starts getting nervous, she can smell the lavender. It works because she doesn't want any medications. So instead of going to the doctor and getting put on some type of medication, they're trying to do some natural stuff, right? And I'm okay with that. But if it doesn't work, then we got to get them on medications. Adaptive. When I say adaptive, what is that? What does that mean? Anybody?
Changing your behavior?
Yeah, it's just adapting to this work. So if I am, I can Kroger's. I was very nervous all of a sudden because everybody was staring at me, right? And I wasn't the only one that didn't have a mask on. But I was the only one fixing to sneeze. And I was really, I felt myself becoming overwhelmed with just, oh my God, I can't do this here, and thankfully the man next door to me coughed. But I was adapting to what? The pressure around me. That, I should have wore my mask, I guess. Our drivers will do the same thing. They'll adapt. The people we're taking will adapt. It may not be a positive adoption. It may be a maladaptive behavior. And what I mean by that is when we create a maladaptive behavior, it's that anger, it's that frustration, it's that anxiety. It's the one that it's that worker that is your best worker, and all of a sudden she blows up and screams and hollers, and she's in the break room yelling at the other bus drivers or whatever, and you are like, what is going on with you? You've never done this. It's because of the coping skills. By the way, most of us did not get taught this growing up. I'm a big fan of, NCIS with Gibbs and Tony and them. I think I created the DiNozzo. You know what that is? Gibbs walks up behind DiNozzo and pops him back the head and tells him something. It's exactly what my mom and dad did. They just popped back the head. Whatever I was doing wrong, I fixed it. I never did it again, right? Tomorrow I did something different wrong. Our school bus driver was named Rita Royal, and I got to ride the bus all the way to the end of the route and back because my parents' auto parts store and our house was on this route. And I remember one day the bus was coming down, and my dad stopped the bus, and he said, he hollered at Miss Royal, and she said, "Hey, Buster, I think your dad wants you to get off the bus." So I was like, "What? I didn't get to ride the route." Because, I got to turn the red lights on. That was my job. And you can't do that now, I know, but that's, that's when we was hanging out the windows and everything else. But So Dad comes and he goes, I'm standing at the door of the bus. And Dad says, Mr. Blair called me today and told me that you were acting a fool in school. Yeah, oh yeah, you know what's fixing to happen. He took his belt off and got me right there, and then put me back on the bus with all the 50 kids on the bus. Forget ADHD, I never got tested because I didn't do the same thing twice. But I had to adapt. We all have to adapt. We didn't get trained to adapt. Consequences of not coping effectively. Well, in the workforce, it could be a write-up, suspension, termination. Our clients and patients or whoever we're transporting, they complain on us. You know, they want to speak to a supervisor right now because they're stressed because of this, the driver's stressed because of it, and you get to deal with it. And probably most of you don't have a counselor on staff that you can just send out there to deal with it.
That's HR.
Yeah. Yeah, I did that too for a while. Never again. I actually was school superintendent for quite a while, and before I went back into counseling, and you couldn't pay me enough to become a school superintendent right now. So avoidance of underlying concerns. So this is where it gets really, really tricky with some of our pre-vehicle, pre-trip inspections, right? Because they get to the point where they just don't care. So instead of walking around that bus and doing what they're supposed to and checking everything out, we get to a point where our employees are stressed, they're out, they're depressed, they've checked out, they don't want to do this. They know that they're fixing to get on this bus or this van with 8, 10, whatever people, and they just don't care. Prolonged distress. They could go for weeks being this way. If they don't seek medical help or counseling, then they won't learn any new techniques or right meds or whatever. Short-term gain, long-term pain. They cheat the system, basically. They're doing something real quick to get it fixed, but the long-term pain is going to be because if they would have just done it right the first time, you wouldn't have to get involved, HR would have to get involved, whatever that looks like in your agency. And then worsening of the initial symptoms. So if they've got just some mild depressed feelings, kind of just lethargic, not really hungry, they come to work, but they would much rather be laying in bed. I know that's most of us every day, right? But these are the ones that now all of a sudden they're missing work. And it's important for us to understand these signs and symptoms because these people, they don't need to be fired. Understand, some of them do, right? I mean, they just do things and we got to call it, right? But on a general, if you've got a good employee that just starts not showing up to work or coming in late, there's an underlying factor there. And so many of us, I was doing some coaching for a company, and the first thing the HR did was just cut them. And I was like, okay, you do realize that we are in a worker shortage right now. And you're firing people faster than you can take applications in. And the guy looked at me and he goes, well, this is the way it's always been. I said, but we're in a new time. You cannot do things the way we used to do things. So we got to be aware. There's a biopsychosocial framework. It's a big word, right? Half the time I can't even get it out right, but I did today. So you have this three-pronged biopsychosocial. So we have psychological, biological, and social and environmental things that make up and create or enhance the mental health issues in our staff, our family, our friends. And some of them overlap. When they overlap, this is when you start really seeing a manifestation of some of the problems, depression, anxiety. I had this big worldwide company. I can't say their name, but because of contracts, but they're based in Bentonville. And so they start having people come in, and now they're going to say, we set you home for 2 years, and now you got to come back in the office. So people like me, my age, was like, oh, yes, let's get back in the office. The newer workers that just got out of college was like, whoa, wait up. We're not coming back in the office. You know, and they have a huge problem going on. Several industries, large companies here in Arkansas have this problem going on because they send people home, and now they don't want to come back to work. They want to continue working from home because we did it so good. Why are you making us come back home, or back to the office? Well, one, because I got buildings we spent billions of dollars on, and I need somebody in that office to justify it, right? No, they're refusing. And then, so when you say come back, they're quitting. They're giving up lucrative jobs that they worked hard, that other people would kill to get these jobs because of some of these things right here, because of the psychosocial. They don't want to come back in the office because they're scared, because we see people dying every day. We hear stories of people dying every day. I heard the story of me dying once, you know. It's not fun. It scares people. Don't worry about the cancel culture. Worry about the scaring culture. The biopsychosocial model considers biological, psychological, and social factors and their complex interactions in understanding health and our experiences as humans. All of these elements influence our well-being. Everything on there makes us who we are. You can take one or two out of it, but you still got to have all these things. Self-esteem, our peer group. One of the things I would suggest, you know, we do this in law enforcement a lot. We do now first responders and holders doing it. Other companies are starting to do it. Is create a peer group in your agency, and these are not counselors. These are just workers who have that temperament to listen, to not be judgmental, that other workers will come to and talk, and then when they come to them and go, you know, I'm really about to lose it. It's like, okay, let's have a conversation here, and then I'll help you get to what we need to do. You know, do we need to go to HR and figure out if this is a, you know, workman's comp thing, or is there employee assistance, whatever we need to do. But it's that peer support group that your work, especially if you have an agency of any size, you know, you need to consider this. It's all the newest buzz. And if you need to, you can reach Ann, and Ann can reach me, and I can kind of walk you through what it would look like and how we set that up. It will benefit and it will pay off in the long run for you guys. So look at this. Here's during late June of last year, adults reported struggling with mental health and substance use. So anxiety and depression is the first one, 31%. Started to increase substance use, 13%. That's your drivers. That's your passengers. Trauma, stress-related disorder symptoms. Now, since COVID comes out, we've put this trauma term on everything. Everything is we created a trauma. And look at that, 26%. Seriously considered suicide, 11%. 11% of the people that have anything went home and considered suicide as the way out of this because of everything we've been talking about. You know, that permanent solution to a temporary problem, but they don't see the way out. And I know we've all been affected by it. We've known somebody or been connected by somebody, but this is what we're seeing in our emergency rooms and when people are coming in to get emergency help. So, maintain social connections. Notice what I did not say. I did not say the physical. I said maintain the social. I know the lawyer said don't text your employees, but the counselor is going to tell you that you got to stay in contact with them somehow. If you know that Miss Betty, who's been one of your drivers for years, left there today and something's just not right, check on her. It takes 3 seconds to pick the phone up and just say, hey, just checking on you. I heard you had a bad day today. I heard you had a rough route. I don't know, whatever. And, then just document it. Take a break. Our drivers, when they're working, they usually don't get to take a break. When I was superintendent, we had a couple of bus drivers that were out. So I had the bright idea I would just help out. I drove the route one day. And I thought 4 or 5 times along that route to call the transportation director and tell them to send somebody to take this bus on for me. Keep a routine. You got to stay doing what you're doing. We got to exercise. We got to go. Right now the weather's getting great. Get out there and start walking. Encourage your staff to get out in the fresh air. That good vitamin D therapy is what we call it. Whatever their routine is, whatever your routine is, you got to keep it. Just because we have a pandemic going on doesn't mean you change your routine. We social distance. When people quit running, they quit walking down the street. I mean, it's like we went way to the extreme. I said, spend time outside, especially now. It's kind of like when you see the dog driving down the street in the back seat of the car and his head's hanging out and his tongue's flapping in the wind. It's okay to do that sometimes. And if you ever sit in traffic over here on I-30, you'll see this a lot in the mornings. Yes, sir.
Can we do that while we're driving?
Yeah. Keep your eyes on the road. Keep your eyes on the road. Now, the trooper may have a different thought on that, but... And
Use you as a reference?
Absolutely. Because most of them I've probably done, they're psychological, so I know where they are, so... I'm teasing, of course, maybe. So reach out for help. We've got to encourage our staff. Your staff, your drivers, are frontline people, 1,000%. And we don't give them the resources because we never had to have the resources, right? We never had to worry about someone sitting in the back of our van having some type of mental issue, because of stress. Now, I know that some of us transport people that have all type of conditions, but this is something new. Probably most of our employees have never been through a class to identify mental health or what to even do if they had somebody in their vehicle with a mental health issue or have a breakdown. So they got to reach out for help. Take care of your physical health. This is a biggie. COVID not only attacks our physical body, but it attacks our brains. And I'll give you some examples. When I was in the hospital, I was in intensive care, and I didn't know if it was 10 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night. The clock just was one of those old-time clocks. And, the only way I finally figured out that it was night or day is because in the hallway, through all the glass doors, in the evenings, the lights would dim. And then it would be quiet. Was gone. So then I finally figured out that was 11 p.m. And then in the mornings, around 6:30, the lights would come back up. So I was able to make a connection. When the doctors wanted to put me on the ventilator and actually told me that I was not going to make it, told my wife that, because I hadn't seen my kids, haven't seen my wife, nobody could come see me. I think I FaceTimed with them one time, but I was so sick I couldn't call. I didn't even have a phone. I had my glasses on, and I told the doctor, I said, I'm not going on a ventilator. I said, I've got rights. I'm not doing that. And she said, no, you don't have any rights. And I said, oh, yes, I do. So I said, "You're going to have to. I'll show you. We're going to turn this around." And she said, "Look, you are decomping fast." So I told the nurse when she came in. Her name was Hannah. She was from Conway. I said, "Hannah," I said, "here's what I need you to do." I said, "In the mornings when you come in, I need you to turn all my lights on, turn every one of them on. Set me up in this bed. Turn the TV on, as loud as it can be." And then I said, "When you bring breakfast in for me, please. I know I got all these tubes, but help me swing my feet over and set up on the edge of the bed to eat. Even when I go to the bathroom, I know I can't get out of bed too far because of all this, but let me stand right here and use the urinal." Now you think, why would he do that? I re-engaged. Because laying there for 30 days, eating red Jell-O, getting blood work every 4 hours, my brain was stopping. It was shutting down. And I had to re-engage it. And they all kind of thought, okay, we'll do this. You know, I guess it was kind of like my last death wish or whatever. You know, would you just do this to pacify me? 3 days later, the doctor says, "I don't know what's going on, but you're getting better." 3 days after that, I was back upstairs in a regular room. A week after that, I was home. Now I was still sick. Don't get me wrong, lungs and all that stuff, but I wasn't laying in that intensive care unit anymore because we re-engaged, and I think part of that was because my wife's a physical therapist, so we take all type of vitamins. You know, you name it, we probably take it. But I think that because of that, and then of course what happened? They came out with this regimen, right? Take all these zinc and all this stuff, turmeric and all this. And I thought, well, I already have all that, you know. So we took care of ourselves. You got to take care of yourselves now. You got to make sure that you stay on top of your health. If you're not walking every day or getting some type of exercise, start doing it. 30 minutes will help fight off depression every day, I promise. Questions? And what time is it? 11:45. Okay. And listen, I don't want this one mad at me. So I want to make sure I stay on track. He's going to bring down the mic.
We have a staff that
Hang on 1 second. He's going to bring the mic for you.
that drives the bus for us, and her husband was on the vent for several months, and something has clicked in her, and I'm just wondering, okay, do we need to allow her, because she works in Christie's building during the day, but she was talking about how she just had a meltdown. And, you know, I'm just wondering, now, she hadn't been, now she just cries, you know, things just, she gets upset. It doesn't rock her right.
Yeah. Did her husband pass, or he survived?
Now, he's up and he's going back to work, but I think they're kind of making the job where he can kind of.
But he's still sick, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, some of that is that trauma we was talking about just a while ago. Mm-hmm. That she was preparing to lose her husband, even though that's not what she was thinking. She had anticipatory grief. And that anticipatory grief is where we prepare ourselves for what's fixing to happen. Mm-hmm. Where, you know, like if you have just a normal grief where we get a call that someone's passed or there's a wreck or whatever, we have that moment and then we can start moving through. So probably in that case, we need to try to get her some help.
Yeah, we were talking about that today, is because of the way, you know, I guess it was about 6 months, and he had to learn how walking all over and everything again, you know. And I think that it's probably the financial toll and everything else, you know. All their kids was grown, you know, and so it was kind of like, I think that, you know, that it has did something mentally to her.
So, especially if we have COVID, especially in men, we're finding that it's depleting our serotonin levels in our brain. So it's creating a depression. I've got some guys I work with that, I mean, I got a preacher that hasn't preached a sermon in over a year and a half now, because he has brain memory problems, he has brain fog, and he is so afraid that when he gets up there in the pulpit, he's going to forget, or he's going to say, you know, he's going to mix passages up, and he's just scared to death. We're seeing this more and more. Yeah. Any other questions? comments, exhortations, dissertations, moans, groans, complaints?
I was just gonna try the dog, the head hanging out the window this week, so if y'all heard anything, it's probably me.
Can you take a picture of that and post it for us? Because I would love to see that. I mean,
I'll try.
all right. So, if you have something like that and you need further assistance, you can call our office and we can kind of guide you through. And if you don't have a counselor or knows, we can find somebody in your area for that. If you don't have EAP or whatever. Okay. Good. Anything else? You have a therapist in front of you. Any questions that you wanted to ask, but you never got the opportunity to ask? I really was sorry a while ago when I made fun of you when you coughed. I just want you to know that right now, you know.
So are y'all seeing that some of these effects can be delayed or maybe cumulative over time and then finally reach a point where it wasn't such a big deal, but it's just accumulated and accumulated and accumulated till you've got to a point where even though we're at the trail end of the pandemic now that
Oh, no. The pandemic numbers may be trailing, but the mental health and anxiety issues are skyrocketing.
Okay, so it's, all right.
Because, so I really dealt with survivor's guilt. Every time I heard of one of my friends passing or my parents' friends passing or read someone pass, I mean, I just went off the chart for a second because, like, why did I survive? You know? But it is. So the PTSD that's coming out of this is that cumulative PTSD. It's different from when you go to war and you're in some type of combat situation and you're on guard 24/7 for the whole time you're there, and you come back and you have some things going on. This is that PTSD that's cumulative. It's just building along until something happens, and that's when they're calling it trauma stress. Yep, and then I think you said the anxiety of the drivers, so just to drive, is creating trauma stress. Every time they come to work and get in that van or bus or whatever it is, they're going through the same things. They're dealing with this, but they've got to come to work because they've got to have a paycheck. They got to, support the family or whatever. So that's what I'm saying. We got to look at ways that we can, obviously, what did that lawyer say? He got a bonus for being on Tuesday or whatever. I mean, we can't do that. I understand that. But this is where you try to figure that out. And I don't know if you have donuts for them when they come in the mornings, or have that snack table when they come back in. I don't know, whatever it is. But we're trying to change that monotony up so that they feel like they're appreciated, even though they're doing an essential job, right?
I suffer from PTSD, massive PTSD. As a supervisor, how do I need to cope with the stress and stuff when so I can handle my
That's a good question.
drivers?
Absolutely. You got to know your triggers, right? You got to know what triggers you. And you got to know that when you get to that point, your drivers have just got on your ever last nerve. You got to know when to say when. And you got to say, okay, I need to take a break here. I need to step out, whatever. It's kind of like I tell couples, and don't ever start that conversation at 9:30. It's going to last 4 hours.
Someone likes that, will you please?
Yeah.
Amen to that.
You can quote me, but and it's kind of like even in my household, when my wife, I'll come in, a long day, whatever, she'll say, "Hey, we need to have this conversation," and I know I did something wrong or whatever. It's like we can't do this right now. It's 9:30. I got to wound down. You've got to wound down. The kids are in bed. Can we reschedule this for another time? If you're having to discipline somebody and you're already up here, then maybe you need to call in another supervisor. Maybe you need to call yourself a timeout and say, let's take a little break here, go to the bathroom, splash some water in your face, whatever you got to do. But when you come back and deal with the situation, I'm not saying don't deal with the situation. I'm just saying there's an appropriate way to deal with it at an appropriate time. Yeah. I know, right?
So your story about being in the ICU and you decided to kind of turn the page. You decided, okay, I'm not going to sit here and wallow in this. I'm going to fight, or I'm going to try and get to back to a sense of normalcy, for you. Well, that's how I heard your story.
Yeah, yeah.
And so in that same sense, as we're trying to get people back to normalcy and back in the office and back out in people, being with people, do you have any advice on how to gauge, how far that goes? Because, there's definitely still a fear and a concern, but yet life has to go on. And in some ways you may be encouraging, improvement and getting in health, but at the same time, you're also kind of inciting some potential fear about, okay, it's trying to get back out. It's time to turn the lights on.
Yeah, and I think part of that is we're saying let's get back out there and get back to work, but the government's still saying, oh wait, you still got to wear your mask. So
The FTA, that's
So we got these two things fighting with each other. Employees know this, right? Because obviously they live these rules. They know these rules. So when you're the supervisor and you're trying to get your staff motivated to do that, you got to lead them, because they're looking at you. They're looking at the supervisors, the directors, to say that this is good. We're going to start this back. Gosh, by doing this, we're keeping you employed. But they don't care about that right now, because what they're worried about is their safety and their health, and what they're really worried about is not them getting sick, maybe, but getting the COVID and taking it back and giving it to baby, giving it to 90-year-old mama, right? So there's a lot of fear factors out there. But I think as you process, your drivers or your supervisors know. So you got to have that one-on-one. You got to start having that more. I don't want to. I say touchy feely, but I don't mean. I mean, what I mean is that you got to have that more. If you're the director and the bus drivers are coming in the mornings, maybe make it a point to be there when they come in and show them and lead them that this is not a bad thing. We've got to get America started again. Anything else? It's free now. I'm like the lawyer. I'm not quite as expensive as the lawyer, but I'm. If you need me, Ann can put you in touch with me, and I'll be glad to help, or anything I can do to help with creating anything or whatever. So thank you for letting me speak to you guys, and have a great day.